All right. So if you joined me a few minutes ago, we talked about the sixth misconception about consciousness. And I want to follow up on one of the questions I recently got. And that is a question about meditation and the apparently spontaneous nature of recognizing what consciousness is or what awareness is. So the question is meditation necessary or is meditation an impediment? Right? What is the role of meditation? Some teachers say that meditation is not necessary and that it becomes another kind of thing that the mind does. Whereas some people say, no, it is quite necessary to do that. So, what is the difference between these two? Well, the idea is that meditation is what helps the first mind to begin to recognize its predicament. Right? So one thing a person can do is either listen to talks or read books and begin to start understand what is happening with the first mind. What is the first mind phenomenon? What is the experience like? What is the condition? What is the whole situation like? That can be understood only to a certain extent. There has to be a sensitivity to the actual experience of that for it to really dawn and make sense. And so this is where meditation can be helpful because what's happening in meditation, initially, of course, there's that tendency to get caught up in everything that's swirling around, but gradually with mindfulness and these meditation practices, that awareness starts to shift and we become aware of that presence that is not necessarily entangled in all the surrounding activities. So, in that practice, what is happening is that first mind is, in a way, seeing beyond itself, or that boundary of the first mind, which is otherwise opaque and which does not allow the vision to go beyond that first mind, that starts to become translucent and transparent. So, in this sense, meditation is very useful. Now, at a certain point, that boundary of the first mind becomes subtle enough that it does not need a particular meditation practice, right? So it's not going to chant a mantra, it's not going to direct its attention on its breathing or any of these practices that help the mind anchor and stabilize. At some point, they will no longer be used, right? Maybe not forever, but for the most part, they will no longer be used. So at this point, this is when some people say meditation is not required. So if the mind is subtle enough that that boundary is seen through, that the mind is not restricted to and attached to all the particularities of what is happening, then at that point, either we can say that meditation is no longer needed, right? The previous kind of meditation, or we can say meditation takes on a new feel in which it is no longer an activity. It is simply living and residing more and more as that awareness. So it becomes from an activity to simply a way of being. And another way of saying that is that that person is no longer meditating because it is not the personality or the first mind meditating anymore. It is simply the nature and that self effulgence being recognized more and more. So, this is why it's not necessarily a contradiction to say that meditation is necessary and also that meditation is not necessary. It depends on what is being referred to as meditation. All right. So, what are the differences and commonalities between prayer and meditation? So, again, it depends on how a person thinks of these things. Prayer sometimes is thought of as asking for things, right? Some people ask, oh, I want this to happen or I want that to happen. And this can be thought of as prayer. To me, prayer is more having a specific intention, right? So it's that feeling that intention to connect with something greater, or even that intention for something to happen, that kind of leaning toward that intending forward, that has the feeling of prayer. right? Even if you think about the classic prayer pose, it's like this. It's this coming together, this pointedness, this union. All of this is implied in prayer. Whereas meditation is not necessarily about intention. Of course, a person meditates because they have a certain intention. They would like to move in a direction. But the actual process itself is not about intending something. The actual process of meditating itself is simply about being, right? And allowing, getting used to that creative uncertainty and allowing whatever is happening or coming up to do so, and recognizing more and more the open field of awareness in which all of these things arise. Versus prayer has much more of an intention to it and a directionality to it. All right, so let's do some more meditation. And if there's another question or two, I'll take those. So, having discussed that, just notice, if we're going to call this meditation, what is this meditation experience like? Sinking further in. All right. Canal says emotions, feelings have come to an end. I feel no emotion toward anything. Is it normal? There's certainly phases in which this can happen, and sometimes, yes, depending on where the mind is, this can happen. It's difficult to comment on this broadly in such a short statement because it depends on what's happening in a person's life. It depends on the different situations, depends on one's own nature and where you're coming from. So I can't comment completely on this, but there are certain phases in which, if there is a whole host of emotions that have been pent up, then as they get processed and as they get released, then there can be these phases of feeling, in a sense, no emotion. But exactly what is no emotion, what is a subtle sense of emotion, how long it lasts, all of those are really individualized. So I can't comment more broadly on that. Sure, Gregory, if you have a question, go ahead and ask. All right, I think we'll pause it here for now and we will resume next time. So we'll do this either next Tuesday or the Tuesday after. We'll resume around 2:20 p.m. If you have questions, you can submit them here or through the website, and I will respond here. All right, so they can be submitted here. Okay, quick question I see from Nor here, from Norm. If we're truly the unchanging self, what is it that perceives the unchanging awareness? There's no separate thing that perceives the unchanging awareness. It is only in this process of approaching this that the polarities of the mind start noticing each other, right? So what we speak of as the first mind, as it becomes more and more subtle, there's still a difference there. And as long as that difference is there, it is that subtler and subtler aspect of the mind recognizing that there is something beyond this. There's something still beyond this. So it is the mind recognizing the mind, different layers of the mind. Just like if you look in the ocean, there are different currents, right? If you move to one part of the ocean, it's cold, and maybe your thighs will feel cold, but maybe your legs at the bottom will feel warm, or vice versa, because there are different layers of the ocean. Though it's one ocean, there's a warm current, there's a cold current. So similarly, different aspects of that consciousness are recognizing the subtler aspects as the boundary is changing. But ultimately, that undifferentiated nature, it is not noticing anything else. It is not saying, hey, look at this consciousness over there. That undifferentiated nature is simply being, and it is as it is, and there is no comment that it can make about itself. All right.